On behalf of East Shore Unitarian Church and the Earth and Climate Action Ministry team, of which we are a part of this church, I'd like to welcome all of you, all the candidates for coming, much appreciated, and to all of you for spending the evening here. We are going to try to keep a tight ship, and I just wanted to, first of all, read a land acknowledgement as we proceed. This is something we read at East Shore services and at gatherings of one kind or another. We at East Shore Unitarian Church acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of Coast Salish peoples. We recognize the impact of settler colonialism and pledge to nurture our relationship with our indigenous neighbors. Their ways and understanding will guide us as we work to restore and sustain their homelands upon which we all depend. And now I'd just like to introduce Paul Bruno.
Great. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Bruno, and I'll be the moderator for this evening. So on behalf of People for Climate Action of Bellevue, Indivisible Eastside, 350 Eastside, Save Coal Creek, 300 Trees, Trees for Livability, Eastside Audubon, the Washington Sierra Club, FutureWise, Sustainability Ambassadors, the Earth and Climate Action Ministry, and a special thanks to East Shore Unitarian Church for hosting. Welcome to the Bellevue City Council Candidates Forum. Please have a seat. So we're honored to have both incumbent and new candidates join us this evening for this 2-hour session. Because climate change is in the critical stage, we'll be focusing on that topic area this evening, along with other environmental concerns. We'll be recording the first 90 minutes of the event, so it's important to keep background noise to a minimum when possible so that we can clearly hear what the speakers have to say. Because our timing has been carefully programmed, there will be no opportunity for debate and initial audience participation and any verbal comments. To facilitate the maximum benefit of our time together, anyone in the audience who may choose to make verbal interruptions of these proceedings will be asked to leave immediately and, if necessary, be escorted out of the room by our security. So we hope that doesn't have to happen. So the first 60 minutes of our time together will begin with brief self-introductions by the candidates. Those introductions will then be followed by 7 questions the candidates were given in advance, and you were also able to get copies of those when you came in. The candidates will answer in an alternating round-robin format. So as an example, the first question will go to Councilmember Stokes, and then followed by Paul Clark and on down the line. When we get to the second question, that will be given to Paul Clark, go down the line, and so forth. As I read the questions, I'll also give the allotted time for each answer. Chris Marks will be our timekeeper this evening, and so we appreciate the candidates honoring the stated time limits. Then the next 30 minutes of the program, the candidates will answer questions from you, the audience. So please use the index cards you received when you came in. Jot down your questions. And if you didn't get cards, please raise your hands and we'll bring you some cards. So with that, let's begin with the introduction. And let's start off with you, Councilmember Stokes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. This is a really tremendous crowd. 4 years ago, we had probably about a third of this. So the interest in the climate and our environment has certainly changed quite a bit, and it's very possible. You can't hear it? Start over. Oh, is this better? Yeah, there you go. I can hear it myself. That's good. I was wondering about that. All right. Really pleased to be here. And this is, as I said, is a really great turnout. It's really exciting to have so many people interested in the climate and change and the forest, all of these different environmental issues. And it's something that I have been very involved in for a long time, and like to talk specifically here about this question. And it goes back to what the Bellevue Council has been doing since 2014, and talking about, 2030, we were going to get to certain levels. And we worked on those, and one of the things, and the question is, if elected, would you honor and affirm that same commitment? Absolutely. And what I've done is actually, I was the one on council who really pushed us to mean something more than just having well, we're going to get to something in 2030. And here we were saying, well, how are we going to start? We only had a few staff. So one of the things I worked on and proposed was we need more staff. And we finally got more staff. And we're also coming in and not just doing once a year or once every other, half a time in a year, and reporting about what we're doing, but coming back more directly. And so the council, with a number of us, but I was a major leader in saying, okay, if we really believe this, really mean it, we have to do something about it. And so we're doing that. We need a lot more work on it. We need you to come in and work on this and keep us moving forward and ask us, what are you doing and how are you doing it? Why aren't you making progress? And that really helps us get going on it. But I think we're on a good path. We just need to keep going that way. And that's one of the reasons I'm running, because I really want to make this work and continue my work and continue to work with the council and the community. And having this community this large really helps us. So I'm really glad to see this, and we're going to get that done. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Paul, over to you.
Just to clarify, we're doing the 2-minute introduction right now?
Yeah, it's a 2-minute introduction.
Okay. That's all right.
All right. So good evening. My name is Paul Clark. I'm running in position 1. Many thanks to the organizers for putting this together, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight on this beautiful evening. I moved to the region in the 90s to go to graduate school at UW, receiving an MS in electrical engineering. I came to Bellevue in 97 for my first job out of school. I rented an apartment not far from here, about a half mile from my Factoria office. Are you hearing me okay? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mom. I moved downtown when my company did. And so for the vast majority of my career, I've really chosen to live in locations where I could walk to work, including the last 7 years where I've run this small tech business from my home. I'm an author, instructor, and consultant in wireless communications and information security. Now, living downtown has enabled my wife, my daughter, and I to downsize to a single vehicle years ago due to our proximity to groceries, shops, restaurants, and parks. And speaking of parks, I've had the privilege of serving on the Bellevue Parks and Community Services Board for the last 5 years, a board I currently chair. Prior to that, I served on and chaired the Civil Service Commission. Now, I'll speak to this more in detail later, but for Bellevue to meet both our housing growth targets and our environmental goals, how we grow in our dense, urban, transit-rich neighborhoods will be crucial. That's why it's essential that Bellevue have a longtime downtown resident on the council, something Bellevue really hasn't had. I also think the council needs the perspective of someone with a lifetime of technology experience, someone who's written tens of thousands of lines of code. Technology is not just an essential part of our business community, it's essential to the innovation necessary to tackle our emissions problems. Because I'm not okay with passing the buck to my daughter's generation, ignoring the very real problem of anthropogenic climate change, yet I want careful analysis to best prioritize Bellevue's actions over the years ahead. Paul Clark, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for all of you for being here. It's a great turnaround. Thank you for the organizer. A great event. My name is Mo. I am running for Bellevue City Council seat number 3. I am a civil and environmental engineer, an affiliate professor in Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the University of Washington. And finally, I have been your Bellevue Planning Commission for the last 7 years. As a professor of civil engineering, I have witnessed firsthand the impact of climate change. It is not anymore an academic issue. It is a reality that we are all facing. Also, because of my department and where I work, I have seen some technology and some research that we can address the impact of climate change. For example, one good news is we are now studying that we can use timber for even mid to 10 level story just by wood, no more concrete. And we know all that a production of concrete add 8% to our CO2 globally per year. As a Bellevue Planning Commission, I have been advocating for ambitious goals in climate change and environment, and I also advocate for monitoring them and reaching those goals on annual basis. I'm not just here to talk about past, I am here to tell you in the questions of tonight and in the later questions what my policies are for future if I get elected to City Council. Look forward to this to tonight, and I'm also looking forward to learn from the candidates. I'm sure they have stuff that I don't know, and I'm here to learn from them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo.
Well, good evening. My name is Janice Zahn. I've been on the Bellevue City Council for just finishing 6 years, and I want to thank you for all the organizations for hosting this event. I'm excited to see the partnerships because when I think about what's been accomplished in the last 6 years on the council, we did that together. When I think about the number of staff, we went from 2 when I got elected in 2017 to 9 staffers, and the force multiplier of those 9 staff, we did that together. In 2019, we heard from the community that for a city of our size, 2 people doing this work was insufficient. And through your advocacy along with us, we made that happen. We've been on this climate journey for a long time, and I'm excited for the work that we've done because as an engineer, as a council member, as a mom, as a 30-year resident in Bellevue, I know that the climate crisis is here and that if we don't do something within the next 8 years, 7 years, on 2030, then any goals we set for 2050 is going to be a challenge for us to meet. So I'm excited about the work that we've done together. What I bring to the City Council for the last 6 years is I'm currently the chair of the King County K4C and the Ledge Committee, where we're actually advocating at the state level for the kind of climate action that we need. We're partnering with King County, Puget Sound Regional Council to make sure that at the end of the day, the climate action work that we need to do is holistic. It's going to take all of us at the local, state, and federal level to make it happen, because it's going to take a lot of investments. And when we talk about investments, we have to talk about where the greenhouse gas emissions is coming from and recognizing the work that we have ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Janice. Betsy?
I'm Betsy Hummer. I'm running for Bellevue City Council position number 5. I am trying to earn your vote. I am a little bit of an anomaly. I actually grew up in Bellevue. My parents built their house in what we call Baker's Woodland Edition over in Enetai before they adopted my brother and had us 5 kids. So I have always been in Bellevue. I graduated, my parents actually taught us how to be public servants. Frank and Mariana Powers volunteered extensively up at Sacred Heart. They helped build the parish. They volunteered in the community. They helped build the Bellevue that we know. They volunteered as our scout leaders. They helped build environmental U.S. citizens because that's what Scouts is all about. I have always grown up with the environment at the topmost of our consideration. My dad built a house in the woods. The woods were very tiny little trees we can see in the old photos. They grew up into huge, massive trees, and we didn't disturb the woods at all. We had a little patch of grass, and we just played in the woods and built forts, and that's how I remember Bellevue, and that's how I saw Bellevue growing up. They even got us into sports. So as far as environmentally consideration, our first competitive swimming was down at Enetai Beach Park in the lake. So no chlorinated pools. and dog paddle, working out, doing dog paddle. I graduated from Bellevue High. I was captain of the swim team, and I was a Girl Scout all the way through my senior year. So we were always very environmentally considerate, camping, pack it in, pack it out, leave it better than you found it. And I am just amazed at the current state of different things we see. I don't want to say the population in general, but we all need to get together to address the climate change and the environmental changes that happen in our neighborhood on a daily basis to make a real difference.
Great, thank you, Betsy. Dave.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Hamilton. I am running for Bellevue City Council position 7. I appreciate all of you being here and certainly appreciate the efforts of the organizers to get all of us here. My family moved here when I was a kid around 1970. We were looking for affordable housing and good schools. Back then, people did that. They moved to Bellevue, certainly for affordable housing, good schools still. I started my own family here. 5 of my 6 kids were born at Overlake Hospital. And attended public schools and involved in a wide range of things. And I spent most of the last 35 years or so chasing them around and supporting their efforts. We did a lot of stuff together as a family. We did a lot of one-on-one camping trips, took family camping trips, spent a lot of time in nature, and found that the more we did, certainly the more they wanted to do. It's traditions that have held through into their adulthood. They're out camping and fishing and kayaking, spend a lot of time outdoors. As my kids were growing up, most of the time I thought about the environment as the environment that was inside my house. I would ask myself questions like, is my home environmentally safe? And, what can we do as a family to protect the environment that we share with our neighbors? And teaching my kids to be ready to make some of those important decisions on their own regarding the environment when they got older. I think over the last few years, my focus has widened. I've been on the Parks Board for the last 5 years. A big priority for the Parks Board, of course, is promoting a connection to the natural space, and it's something I've really loved doing. Also lucky enough to have been a neighbor of Sally Lawrence, which got me connected to Save Coal Creek, which is really an effort I know we'll talk about later, but something I've been really happy to be a part of. And, I think as far as climate change goes, I know we're behind. The work we have isn't going to be easy, but I know that we can accomplish a lot if we do it together.
Great, thank you, Dave. So we now move to the question section of the program, and we'll begin with Paul Clark. So the first question is, in 2014, and again in 2019, the Bellevue Council committed to cutting greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050 using a baseline year's emissions. If elected, will you honor and affirm that same commitment? 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm giving that a qualified yes. I think we need more data to ensure that we have the right targets. These targets were developed before COVID. There's a strong chance that Bellevue may grow significantly more than was forecast in 2019. With more people, I don't think it's unreasonable to adjust our targets accordingly. Furthermore, if you look at the wedge analysis plot on the city's environmental dashboard, a third of the target reduction depends on external factors, things outside of Bellevue's control. If state and PSE fail to come through with that cleaner energy, we may not be able to make that up purely through local action. We need to be flexible.
Great, thank you, Paul. Same question to Mo.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood the scheme. I got it now.
Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, my answer is yes. City of Bellevue is doing a great job. The resident and people who live and work in Bellevue are doing a great job, but we are not on track. So if I get elected, my only improvement is what our mitigations plans are to get on track. Paul mentioned the city did a great job to have the dashboard that shows us we are behind. We just need to get on track.
Great, thank you. Janice, same question.
Yes, absolutely. I honor and affirm that same commitment. In fact, in 2019, when we were voting on our climate commitments, we had an option to go leading edge instead of bold, which would have gotten us to carbon neutral by 2050. And we voted to stay bold. And so we have a long ways to go, and I would say absolutely we need to make that commitment. At the regional level, we're actually choosing to do our wedge analysis together. So part of Puget Sound Regional Council is actually going to be creating that data for us so we can actually work together to make sure that happens.
Great, thank you. Betsy?
Of course, I would affirm the goals, but I would always like to review and revise. When I listen to the environmental sustainability initiative people the other day at council, they couldn't answer this question. They said, well, we're not quite on track. So taking other factors into consideration and making sure that whatever we decide on does not severely impact our lowest income residents, because they are most reliant on their automobiles for access to, oh, well, that was quick, to their jobs and schools and getting around. So I want to make sure that it's equitable and that it doesn't negatively impact the most vulnerable among us.
Great, thank you. Dave?
The short answer is yes. I mean, not only that, but all the goals of the environmental stewardship plan, I think we need to remember as elected officials, we need to think long term. I think good goals are stretch goals, but they're achievable. I think we can achieve our goals that we set for ourselves, but I have no illusions about the difficulty of it and the speed with which we need to make these decisions and start moving forward.
Great, thank you, Dave. And John, same question.
Yeah, and same answer before, and that part of it is that, yes, we need to make changes, and we have made changes, and I think it's going to be a real tough one to get to our goal, because as everybody, I think, understands this, we need to change things, and we actually had a conversation at a council meeting on Monday about this in terms of the new staff, and we're looking at how to change and look at the new realities of that. So we are on top of that, and I'm really excited the fact that we listened to the council, the city did, and the staff, and we put together, I think, a really good team that is going to help us in this, but we have to work together, and it's going to take all of us here in the audience and everybody else to work with us on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. So now we move to question number 2. And Mo, you'll lead us off on this one.
You got it.
In your circulated election materials and in public statements, will you publicly advocate for the city of Bellevue to take strong actions to achieve those 2030 and 2050 emission reduction commitments?
Yes, I encourage all of you guys to go to my website, mo4bellevue.com. In my priorities page, I have a section named Sustainable Bellevue that I outlined not only what, but also how we should get there. I think I'm going to promote policies that are renewable energy, energy efficiency, recycling, a healthier tree canopy, and a widespread adoption of electric car. Since August, I'm a proud owner of electric car. It's amazing. I try to bike wherever I go, but it is not just about policies. I think it is very important for elected officials to do engagement. As Paul mentioned, it is a regional thing. We need to work together. So if I get elected, I work with other elected officials. I work with program and organizations like you and businesses and residents who live and work here to address this issue.
Great, thank you, Mo. Janice, same question, 60 seconds.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, if you go out and look at my doorbeller, the very first sentence at the top says sustainable, welcoming, and thriving Bellevue. I chose sustainable as the first word because that's what I believe we need to do in order to make sure that we're taking care of the most urgent needs for our future generations. If you look on my website, in the achievements page, you'll see the accomplishments we've been able to do together. Because I believe that there's a lot more to be done, and we need to be stepping forward and making sure that sustainability is in all that we do. A couple things that I've done since I've been on the council. In 2020, I advocated for adding sustainability or sustainable environmental sustainability to our vision statement. And there is now a question, if you interview for a board or commission, where one of the questions asks about sustainability. So whatever board or commission you're in, we want you to talk about that.
Thank you, Janice. Betsy, same question, 60 seconds.
Yes, I believe that Bellevue should always be at the forefront of most every policy that we have, and especially with the environment. We're known as a city and a park based on, as I say, from Lake Hills, our Larson Lake Greenbelt, and I promote that everywhere I go to make sure that we emphasize our streetscapes, that we emphasize the great things that we have going on. When I first, don't want to get more because it's late getting up there. When I first did the Bellevue Essentials in 2014, an intern had gone through the City Services Center and done an assessment of what we could do to be more environmentally responsible in that particular building. So I will advocate for the continuance of the environmental sustainability initiative and make sure that it, again, like I said, that it works for everybody in our city.
Great, thank you, Betsy. Dave, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I brought some campaign materials. They're out there. You can take a look and judge for yourself. My website also is available to you, so it's davehamilton.vote. I think that the statements that I make that are going to be the strongest, are going to probably be the statements I make tonight and in any kind of follow-up conversations we have. Environmental sustainability, parks and open space, those are central to my campaign. I'm going to work with my colleagues and staff to strongly prioritize energy efficient homes, businesses, environmental conservation practices, and the tree canopy, improving it. I really believe that policies that strengthen our natural systems, those are going to play a key role in achieving our goals. Certainly need to look at tree canopy, access to parks and open spaces, recycling gray water, rainwater, that kind of thing, to really help us out. So, I mean, those are a few examples, and certainly the points that were made earlier about collaborating with our elected officials around the region, that's really going to be critical. I mean, these problems don't have borders, and the solutions don't either.
Great, thank you, Dave. John, same question to you. Question number 2.
Well, I think the answers that have been made so far are really great, and the answer absolutely is yes. We have to increase our activity on this, and I think our goal is good, but as everybody is saying, and it's glad to hear people get a consensus on this, we need to do better, and we need to take that message back, and we will do that. I did want to real quickly say back that I just got into, because I like to talk about the stuff rather than myself on this, but I was a Boy Scout, and my wife worked with EPA here in Seattle, and I'm the chair of the King County Rye 8 Salmon Recovery Council, have been for 5 years. I've been involved in other activities and with having to do with climate change and all, and with the forest and Friends of the Cedar River Watershed. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm really excited to see the city and the members of the city and people running for city council and on city council saying the same thing. We made a lot of strides in getting people to understand this, so it's good to have them on board. And I'm really looking forward to getting this stuff done and do more of this and answer these questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Paul, over to you.
Looks like I'm on. Oh, I just spilled some water. Sorry about that. So I really, as an engineer, care a lot about results, and I am already advocating for what I think is the single most important thing that's going to affect our city's emissions going forward. Focusing our city's rapid upcoming growth into areas that will result in the lowest collective carbon footprint. To give you an idea of the scale of the growth we're talking about, at a minimum 35,000 new homes out of 61,000 that we currently have. And with the DEIS options that you may have seen recently, that could grow even further. It's critical that we grow primarily in downtown and areas designed for growth. Multifamily housing results in lower building-based emissions, but the bigger issue is transportation. Bellevue has a lot of highly compensated workers who in general don't get out of their cars unless transit works really well for them. And it can work well in our growth corridors. It can work well near light rail on top of rapid transit. Because the alternative is intra-city sprawl, indiscriminate upzoning, more traffic, more congestion, more emissions. That's the strongest action we can take. That's the third bullet point on my website and all my campaign materials.
Great, thank you, Paul. Now we move to question number 3. Bellevue recently increased funding for its environmental stewardship initiative from $60,000 to $560,000 per year, enabling 5 new sustainability staff to be hired this year. Yay. Will you commit to funding this staffing level throughout your term on the council if elected? And Janice, we'll start with you, and you have 30 seconds.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, to correct you, we actually have a total of 9 now. So we actually have more than 5 that we added. And I would say absolutely, because they're going to be a force multiplier. We know that at the federal level, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law has a lot of funding that the city is eligible for, either through projects or tax credits. And what it's going to take is to have the staff that's knowledgeable about these different programs to be able to pursue that and make sure that the 560 is magnified even more. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Betsy, same question, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Well, congratulations to all the people in this room for getting that funding. I was at most of the council meetings where the additional staff were requested. I will commit to continuing the Environmental Services Initiative, but I want to make sure that we have measurable goals, that it's continually reviewed and revised, and changes are made as quickly as possible if they're not achieving the goals of the initiative itself. And I'm excited to see what the consultants bring in that they talked about last week. And yes, I would definitely make sure that the Environmental Sustainability Initiative continues.
Okay, thank you. Dave, same question.
Yeah, so certainly glad that we've added staff for that. I'm glad that they can join the resource conservation staff that we have on hand. But it is not just that staff that's involved in addressing climate change. It's the entire staff at the city. So every department focuses on climate change and the climate and how they impact, their departments impact climate change in general. So it seems like we have the right staffing levels now. I would certainly commit to the funding level, but I think as we go forward, and all of us collaborating, if we decide that there is possibly a better use for that money, then I think we should look at it. But I think that we've taken a good first step. We need to build on this, and I think stay the course until we figure out something better to do.
Great, thank you, Dave. John, same question for you, question number 3.
Get the cookie out of the way there. No, I think all the answers are really great. It's really very helpful to have everybody running for council that seem to be on board. And that's something that's very unusual. And I think it's because those of us who've been working on inside and outside together, and that's always good. And I think what we're doing is exactly right. We will get our goals, and particularly if you keep working, pushing on us, we can say things. We're good at this. We can talk about we're going to do this and that. But what we really need is to have the community support us, because a lot of us are willing to go out on a limb on this, and we need to have somebody down there to catch us. So work with us, we're moving along greatly, and it's because of you. And I will work my hardest to see that it works and we go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Paul, same question.
Yeah, echoing a little bit what Dave said, I think we do need to make sure that we're pointing our resources in the right direction. Staffing does not necessarily equal results. I think that we're going to talk in question 5 about some really useful activities that are very quantitative, very measurable, that I think would be great to engage the sustainability staff on. Also securing state and federal grants for the city, something Bellevue's been very good at. I think that would be another way we can sort of measure the effectiveness of this group.
Great, thank you. Mo?
Yes, I would like to thank the people for climate action and other groups to work with City Council and make this a reality. The 5 staffs, great job. We have a lot more work to do. We need to collect accurate data, do more accountability, and meeting our goals. I am committed to fiscal responsibility, but I think the message I wanted to go out is the cost of inaction on climate change in long run is far greater than taking action now. We owe this to our future generation, and we should do whatever we can.
Great, thank you, Mo. So now we move to question number 4, and Betsy will lead us off on that one. The latest information published by the city shows that Bellevue is not currently on track to hit the 2030 commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. It is apparent that much of the public community needs help to understand the urgency and assume an active role in reducing citywide emissions by 50% in 2030. Would you support the city declaring a public climate crisis to help focus community-wide attention on this urgency? If not, what do you suggest for rapidly increasing community-wide engagement?
Great.
90 seconds.
90. What happened to the 30? Okay. Well, yes. Well, the climate crisis, I think, is a little bit more exaggerated than what we actually need. I would need to know more about all of the implications that would follow from declaring a climate crisis. I believe that we can start now by having a campaign to engage the community. What I have found that works really well is posting on nextdoor.com and using the services that are right here in this room with all the partnerships. I think a grassroots effort is much more effective at getting to everybody than a city-imposed mandate. And especially, as I said from the beginning, we want to make sure that it doesn't cause harm to the most vulnerable among us, the lowest income individuals who are most dependent on their automobiles for making their life in Bellevue the best life that they can have. I think that it's easier for a lot of other people or other for instance, people who just go into Seattle for their work. I think it's way easier for them to reduce their carbon emissions than for somebody who relies on their automobile to get to 3 different jobs during the day. So that's my biggest caution about declaring a climate crisis.
Great, thank you. Dave?
So I think the short answer is I'm not totally sure. I'm not really sure exactly what a climate crisis declaration would mean. If the question is, do we have a climate crisis, then I would say yes, obviously, 100%. So I'd need to get a little better educated, what I've looked into as far as such a declaration. There's some merit to it, but I'd want a little bit more information. I think we all need to assume an active role in reducing our citywide emissions. I know that Councilmember Zahn mentioned the King County Cities Climate Collaboration. Working with neighboring cities, I think efforts like that are really effective, and I think they help accelerate taking positive climate action. So I'm very positive about those. Met with a couple of young folks here today as well, high schoolers who are involved in taking climate action. I think sustainability ambassadors, any way that we can involve young folks in dealing with the climate crisis before us, all the better. These are good early investments we can make that are going to pay off for a long time, and I think they have a lot of good information to share with us. So, we already approached city's growth and infrastructure goals by envisioning what Bellevue will look like for our children, and I think using that same approach and applying it to climate action makes a lot of sense to me.
Great, thank you, Dave. John, same question to you. You have 90 seconds.
Yes. I think the answers we've had so far have been very, very helpful in looking at this and how we're approaching it. The answer to the question is, I think saying we need to have a climate crisis and we need to do something about it will help galvanize people on this. It's not a question in the sense that whether we have it or not, it's how we approach it. And I think, and Dave, I think, said a lot of things in terms of what I would work on it and approach it as well. But one of the problems we have in getting anything done is we talk about it and we have to go back and forth on the goals and things like that, and it just takes a long time to get something done, and then think by that time we've passed it up. So we need to make a really huge push right now on climate change issues and educate people and get people involved. And I think this city understands it to a great extent, a lot more than other places. But we can go forward, and a lot of answers have been given here that are good. I do think that raising the question about whether we really should do this and how it's going to affect other people is a valid thing to do. One of the things we have to realize, though, is that if we don't really work on climate change, poor people will suffer the most. So they're involved. Just the common folks will be involved, like all of us. And it's not just something that for a certain group of people. And it's to help people who can't help themselves is a big part of that. But if we don't attack climate change, if we don't agree, we don't understand it, don't say we're behind it, we will not get there. So I think we're all in agreement in many, many ways, and I know you're in agreement from you that you want this done. So what we need to do is not talk about it, but get out there and do it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Paul, 90 seconds.
Hi. I don't actually support declaring a crisis. I don't think that kind of signaling is effective at getting people to change behaviors. When it comes to awareness, I think we'd have better luck reaching families through YouthLink or schools or other vectors like that. Rather, I think we need to build a city where people want to make lower emission lifestyle choices and market those, right? I want those choices to, as much as possible, not be in conflict with their interests, but in harmony. That's where I think my personal experience is somewhat informative. When it comes to emissions, transit's great, walking's better. Living downtown requires my family to make some trade-offs. Don't have as much space, don't have a garage to stuff things in. But a walkable lifestyle is very, very important to us and has been my entire adult life. And while I have a carbon footprint, I'd be happy to compare with anyone on the council or on the stage here, except maybe Mo and his bicycle. There are numerous and well-documented health benefits to a predominantly pedestrian lifestyle. Additionally, avoiding traffic congestion, unpredictably long travel times is extremely valuable to our state of mind. And we're not alone. People want walkable neighborhoods. City of Bellevue surveys have shown it. We need to build low-carbon walkable housing options, and with the quantity of office space we have downtown and in our growth corridors, it's really a shame we don't have more of that right now within walking distance of all those jobs. So let's build them, use them to meet our emissions goals, and market them. I think that's the message.
Great, thank you, Paul. Mo?
Thank you. The UN Secretary General shift their wording from global warming to global boiling. I think they are sending a message. We are not on track, so of course we should send a message to, as a city council, we need to send a message to our residents, to our people. I think, as mentioned, we need to increase our community engagement and market that. I think everything starts in our families, in our schools, so I'm very happy to see many students here in the audience. Launching a public education campaign would be a great way to do that. If you have not heard, Eastside Climate Challenge is happening right now, and I think that's one way to introduce the concept to people. I think everyone wants to be environmentally healthy, but we just need to invest in more awareness. Hosting a variety of community events help, and partnering with a lot of organizations that are here. 300 Trees are one of my favorites. I already have 6 trees from them. They are all alive. Don Marshall is the witness. I love Keep Bellevue Beautiful. That's a great thing to do. We all can do more of these. Bellevue has a strong history of community programs, and we need to leverage that.
Thank you, Mo. Janice, same question.
Yes. So when I got this question, I actually went back to my notes because People for Climate Action, you actually gave me a one-pager about declaring a climate emergency. And so I looked at what the actions were related to that. And we could say that we could call it a climate emergency, climate crisis. The reality is we need to move with a lot more urgency than we have been. And I see Randy out in the audience, right? We've been engaging with our youth and our sustainability ambassadors for a long time because the students absolutely know that the future generation that they're going to inherit, they need the adults to be stepping forward with a lot more urgency. So whether we declare a climate emergency, a climate crisis, how we actually get everyone on board, the Bellevue's Sustainable Bellevue Plan has 77 actions. Every one of us could be working on that. And that's both community level as well as municipal level, which is the city. I believe the city needs to model the way. Our climate action goals for the city is actually to be 80% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2040, even though the community one is by 2050. So what can we do collectively to show that we can electrify our fleet, we can solarize, we're supporting heat pumps, and making sure that those very investments, we're actually able to tell the stories and make sure that folks know how they can help.
Great, thank you, Janice. So question number 5 will be led off by Dave. Bellevue's latest citywide greenhouse gas inventory shows that existing residential buildings account for about 1/4 of the total emissions. Given that fact, would you support the city providing some level of advice and financial aid to low-income owners who seek to lower their energy bills and greenhouse gas emissions by making energy efficiency improvements or by converting to electric heat pumps to heat their existing homes? In 60 seconds.
Thank you. I would say, well, obviously, yes, but I would even be willing to throw in the advice to rich folks. So I think advice should come to everybody. Everybody needs to be engaged. It's free to give and free to receive. I think we're lucky, too, that the state also cares deeply about reducing emissions with a clean energy fund. Money that we get, I think, really should make its way to some of our lower income residents for sure. Bellevue leads the Energy Smart Eastside program, which gets heat pumps to low-income households. I think that's a wonderful program. And I think, too, additional grants, if we can get from the solar grant program, energy efficient grant program, we can make good use of those, too. And I think directing at those to folks who need the help and can make these important positive changes for us makes a lot of sense.
Great. Thank you, Dave. John, same question.
Yes, I think we should be doing this, increase it as indicated, and I think what a lot of it is getting out and working with people. It's on, right? Doesn't sound like it. and the things that have been questioned or raised on this are very important, but we need to talk with people with PSE. We have worked with them. They have different programs that we could connect people with that. And for the idea that I think Dave talked about in terms of who should be approached on this, obviously, people who really need help on this, it's very important for that. The same thing is we can also make sure we work with everybody to make sure to see that we do get environmental connection with their electricity and their heat and everything else, and that it's worked. So it's an overall thing, but I like the idea that we keep remembering that a lot of people have trouble living up to these goals that we have that a lot of us can meet. We need to make sure we work with them because that makes a big difference. On the other hand, people who have very big houses and all put a lot more out there too. So it's working with all these different groups together. And we have to take different approaches for it. And I think some good ideas have been promoted already. And we can get there. Again, it all
John,
comes down
I'm
to
sorry,
having...
John, you've
Okay,
reached
up?
time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, for me. As I mentioned earlier, I think, or hinted at, this might be a great set of projects for at least some of our sustainability staff to attack. In general, for these programs, I would like to see some data on dollars per ton of CO2 equivalent, just so we can stack rank these programs and figure out how best to prioritize them, or that management can. But based on the costs of similar programs in other cities, which I've looked at, I'm confident these projects would be a good use of our resources, especially since we're able to leverage all the resources that Dave and John were talking about. There's $163 million available in the 2023 budget, Washington State budget for programs like this. Bellevue is really good at pursuing those types of funds, and so I definitely think we should be on top of that. And like I say, it's not just the energy efficiency. For example, we should be evaluating a program to reduce methane leakage in homes that are still natural gas powered. I mean, there's an extraordinary amount of damage that methane does relative to CO2, and so we should be on top of that, replacing pilot lights with better ignition systems. Lots of opportunities for improvements, and I think it's reasonable to help low-income homeowners get there.
Great, thanks, Paul. Mo?
Thank you. Yes, this program would have a number of benefits. First, we are helping low-income people, cost saving, great. As mentioned in the question, is going to reduce emission, so that's a win-win situation. It also improved their healthy life by improving their air quality, so that's another great benefit. And finally, I think we should partner with local businesses and maybe get some discount rate because we are managing the program in a large volume. It is worth it mentioned, but I'm now throwing some numbers. As David mentioned, the top 10% of income earners in US contribute 10 times more than the bottom 10% to our emission. So it is a wide, community-wide effort, and we need to invest in raising awareness and encouraging action among all of us.
Great, thank you, Mo. Janice, same question.
Yes, absolutely. We need to be supporting our low-income families. I would say that to Dave's point, the Energy Smart Eastside is a program that we have in place to help with heat pumps for low-income households. It's also when we think about transportation, which is another place where we know that right now, if you live in an apartment, you probably don't have EV charging infrastructure to even allow you to take advantage of being able to purchase an electric vehicle, which at the federal level, there are some federal rebates associated with that. So we need to be talking with property owners to see what it would take to be able to invest in EV charging so that that type of infrastructure is available for people. We're also working as part of the King County K4C. I just had a coordinating meeting to talk about having Rep. Dolio and Department of Commerce Mike Fong talk about the Climate Commitment Act dollars and how we might be able to leverage some of those investments to help the families. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy?
Yes, I think it's a great idea to help anyone with a single-family home if that is their greatest emission issue. We already have a home repair program offered through the city of Bellevue for loans and grants to help the lower and moderate income families living in single-family homes improve their energy efficiency. From weatherization, I'm not sure about heat pumps. I know my husband has a couple of them, but there's got to be other alternatives that make less noise, that are perhaps less damaging to the house. And I think that a lot of stuff just needs to be looked into. As my career was in the lumber business, so understanding that lumber and building materials need to be sustainable, and these older houses, as I'm doorbelling, they really need a lot of maintenance. And anything that we can do to help our residents improve their situation and improve their quality of life in their homes will be welcome. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. John, you'll lead us off on question number 6. Cities throughout the U.S. are trying to plant more trees to mitigate dangerous heat islands which threaten the health and well-being of their citizens. Our city in the park in Bellevue is blessed with abundant tree canopies, but many large trees are being cut down for a variety of reasons. Should Bellevue's current tree preservation code be substantially improved to enhance tree canopy through preservation as well as by adding new trees? You have 30 seconds.
Well, the answer is absolutely yes. This is something that we've been struggling with for a good while. It is, we've had people come talk to us about this, the 300 trees, all these other things. It is something we need to attack even more vigorously, and I know we'll hear good things coming up from the rest of the people on the dais here. But the reality is we do have to make changes in that. We do have to work with people and with the trees and keep them and keep our tree canopy, and there are a lot of ways we can do it. We just have to have people on the council who will work on that. We can say a lot of things that sound good, but when it comes down to it's what do you do when you vote? And we have to have people who, and I think we're talking about that, but we know what we need to do. We need to move forward on this, and we can do it.
Great, thanks, John. Paul?
Yeah, I supported the council's interim ordinance last year protecting landmark trees. I also appreciate the comments of council members asking for better data collection and tracking. We increased our canopy 3.4% roughly over the last decade, so I think 39 to 40% is a very achievable goal, and we should assume that that's going to happen, and we should commit to doing that. But we shouldn't stop there. I do support additional planting, and I do think staff's focus on the right tree in the right place is important. Rather than focusing only on the 40% metric. I think there are ways we could game ourselves to that metric that we have to be careful about.
Yes, our tree canopy code is outdated. There are some less minimum specification, and now we allow large trees to be removed. We are working on that. City Council asked Planning Commission to work, is coming to our Planning Commission, come to our meeting. If you want to know what's going on, we need a stricter permitting requirement that prioritize comprehensive tree preservation. I want to thank here Trees for Livability and Lee Sargent that come into Bellevue Planning Commission all the time and educating us on this topic.
Great, thanks, Mom.
Yes, we all know the value of trees. They do so much for our community and our very lives. And so, yes, I absolutely support this. And I would encourage the community to engage with us because we're in the middle of updating our tree code and giving us your feedback. I see the mayor in the audience, and actually in those discussions, she put a challenge on the table. Why 40%? Maybe we should be looking at 50%. And really thinking hard about how we preserve as many trees as we can in a thoughtful way. Thank you.
Yes, of course I support the tree canopy code and the revision. I have witnessed the toughest part of even our existing tree canopy code is the enforcement. And so that's something that needs to be addressed. I also believe that there are ways to improve the livability and the tree canopy code, not just by planting trees, but helping people re-landscape their yards. So two things: helping people in their existing homes with their trees and with their code, but the enforcement issue is what gets us in the end all the time.
I'm going to be a little bit repetitive here. Certainly agree with plenty of the comments that have been made. I think we do need to improve our tree canopy policy. Appreciate the comments from some of the council members, such as our mayor, who think that we're nearing the goal and we should set that goal higher. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think improvements to the city's permit approval requirements also make sense, and we need some enforcement. So I think we have some neighbors neighboring cities that handle the enforcement pretty well. I think we should look to them for an example, and if we have preservation and enforcement, we can really make some good, more improvements.
Great, thanks, Dave. So our last question of the 7 questions before we move to the audience questions, Paul will lead us off in this one. King County recently announced a grant of millions of dollars to preserve and enhance green areas around our Cold Creek and Cougar Mountain parks. The money is conditioned on smaller contributions from the city of Bellevue. Would you support the city making such contributions to preserve these natural treasures for future generations?
Yes. Can't believe I just advocated for something with coal in its name to an environmental forum, but yes. I supported the 2022 Parks Levy because I knew it was important to ensure sufficient parks, trails, and open spaces in our city, especially for underserved neighborhoods. And I think those levy funds are very well suited to this purpose. Given the availability of the other grants referenced to defray the cost, I definitely support the purchase. Especially excited about the chance to combine the visual elements of our city's past with trails, the most requested type of parks and open space amenity. It would really add a unique element to our already amazing park system.
Yes, I wanted to applaud Save Cold Creek and King County for the money. I think we as a candidate or city council, we need to strive a balance between development and environmental stewardship. I think in this case, overall benefits of preserving Bellevue's wildlife and plants outweigh the proposed development. So I work with Park Levy to get the additional funding if I get elected.
I too support preserving the natural areas around Coal Creek, and excited and thankful that King County, through their conservation futures, was able to actually up their contribution in order for us to make these kind of purchases. We know that that particular area and that parcel is very special, that once those trees go away, they don't ever really come back in the same way. And it's a connection between the Coal Creek Park to the King County area. Thanks.
I admire the Save Coal Creek campaign. Nice job, Sally Lawrence, and King County stepping up and making it possible. I would like to go, and of course I support the city of Bellevue matching the funds and doing whatever it takes to preserve that property and make it into parkland. I would like to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. There should be a way. I know that the Parks Department is always looking at new parks property, but I believe there should be a way to have an assessment of similar type properties so that this doesn't happen in the future, so that Bellevue makes a plan and works with, again, with all the partnerships to make sure that these nice parcels do not get developed or sold to developers. And it doesn't just happen in the natural area, it happens with apartment buildings and the wetlands that are closer in. Thanks.
Well, as my wife would say when she really wants to make a point, 1,000%. So I completely support the Save Coal Creek effort. I helped lead the Parks Levy last fall to a successful conclusion. I've been on the Parks Board for 5 years. I've been a chair for a couple of years. previously, and I've been on the Save Quote Creek Steering Committee. So this is a project that I'm intimately familiar with. I've loved being a part of the team that got this across the finish line. Certainly appreciate the guidance and support of council to date, certainly King County Council, and look forward to making a vote in favor of buying that property when I'm on council.
Great, thank you, Dave. And John, to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we're ending up on this this particular issue. I've been working on this for some time. I'm on the King County Regional Policy Committee. I'm on the Rye Salmon Recovery Council and other organizations, you know, countywide and all, which means that I also have very good relationships and work with the county people who make these decisions. And I work with Tracy Crew and Dow Constantine personally to get them to back this up, and other people there. And Claudia Balducci did a great job on this. Dave has been amazing on this. We've worked together, and we have a very positive group of people who in the city have worked with us on this with Sally Lawrence. And I went to a meeting of the group and talked about it, and I pushed this, and we're going to get it done. And we have the ability to do it, and I agree with everything that's been said here. It would be nice to have, again, on a council, more unity than we actually have on this issue when it comes down to it. So I will continue to push on this and make it happen too, and with everybody working together. It's a good teamwork. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, John. Well, thank you to our candidates for answering these questions for us, and that concludes our 7 questions. And now we have a few from the audience that will present. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to answer all that came in, so we'll just be able to get through 1, 2, maybe 3 of them in our time allotted, because we want to make sure that you all have a chance to mingle with the candidates for the remainder of the evening. So the first question is, acknowledging that we need an equitable togetherness from fossil fuels. Jen, could you just help me with this? I don't know. Transition. Togetherness is a good word, but that we need an equitable transition from fossil fuels. What do you see as ways the city can advance environmental equity while still reducing fossil fuel needs? Yeah, still round robin. So let's see, that would be Mo. Yes, please.
Can you just read the togetherness question
I will.
one more time?
Yeah. It's all about togetherness. Acknowledging that we need an equitable transition from fossil fuels, what do you see as ways the city can advance environmental equity while still reducing fossil fuel needs?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I like the word that the person who raised the question, equitable. In any transition, we cannot just do that overnight. It should be planned. We should not hurt anyone during the process, but at the same time, the goal is to move from the fossil fuel. I think if we have these both in mind, we can come up with those fair policies that shift us from and move us to the renewable energy that we all agree that is a better energy and cleaner energy. But at the same time, we should not close all of our gas stations tomorrow. That's not equitable.
Great, thank you. Janice?
Yeah, I would say that absolutely the city needs to play a strong role in moving us away from fossil fuels. The one that I would comment on here would be a couple weeks ago as part of the King County Climate Group. We had a couple of presentations about community solar. And that's the one I want to lift up because we just recently got solar on our house, and I can tell you that our mortgage is a little bit higher because we borrowed money in order to do that. So what community solar is to be able to allow potentially a group to be able to take advantage of solar, to move away from using energy more efficiently. And that's actually one of the areas that we need to be doing some lobbying at the state level so that they can actually help us meet that goal. And then earlier I had talked about apartment buildings and EV infrastructure. That's another area. And I think that we need to really double down on the heat pumps as well, and weather stripping and so that the folks that are living in their homes actually are able to be more energy efficient. Thanks.
Again, I'd go back to my, when I think of equitable, I think of my neighborhood. Because we are in modest single-family homes. There's a few of us left in Sunset Ranch, and Fur Terrace has a number of them. But mainly, we are surrounded by apartments, and they are subsidized low-income housing. It is affordable housing, and so we have the lower-income residents right in our neighborhood. And like I said before, their dependence on the automobile. If we need to transition away from that, if that's our fossil fuel, then we need to take that population into consideration with anything that we do. I think that needs to be the top priority, because people in Bellevue are working to live their best life. And if it negatively impacts the people who need to live closer to their work in the subsidized low-income housing, then it really needs to be evaluated.
Well, I knew the audience participation questions were going to be the most challenging, so we're off to quite a good start. So I think this is a good question. It's one I think we need to really have a good conversation about. I think whenever we bring about changes, we want to make sure that everyone is at the table, and if this impacts you, you should be part of the decision. But I think providing housing options, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if we have housing options that don't require people to drive either at all or as much, I think that's really helpful. I think public transit is very helpful in how we could subsidize that, and certainly agree with Councilmember Zahn regarding EV infrastructure and making that available to folks in multifamily housing.
Great, thank you, Dave. John, over to you.
Absolutely, we need to work on this. And equitable is something we talk about a lot, and we talk about how we get this done in different ways, and then sometimes we forget, as has been pointed out, that we have real people working on this. So it's more complicated than just making up a rule on this and work on it. But I think we can do it, and we started on that. After all, our diversity is our strength, and equitable is something we believe in, and we have to actually make it happen. So I'm glad again to hear that, in pretty much in coherence here, that the folks at the table here would like to see this go forward in different ways. We have to not let ideas of, well, we can't do it because somebody can't. We have to deal with it. They can't make it. We just leave them alone. We have to actually work out ways to help people who cannot do it by themselves, and at the same time work with people who can do it but don't do it. So basically, it's getting everybody to understand that if we work together on this, we have the capacity and the ability to make it work. We can talk about ideas and programs all the time, but it comes down to working with people and having groups like this group work with their neighbors, work with the city, and make sure the city follows this through. We can talk about the theories and everything else. When it comes down to it, it's people making decisions, and to make good decisions, we have to have people come and work with us on this and keep us in the straight path, which I think you're doing. So we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Paul?
Yes, so I think, like I've kind of said before, when we're dealing with these types of problems, we have to have some sort of metric to evaluate the cost effectiveness of them. We could go all the way to, if you're driving an internal combustion car, you get an EV. That's going to be pretty cost prohibitive. I doubt that the budget's going to be able to accommodate that. There are, however, interim steps, and I would hate for the perfect to become the enemy of the good, and I think that looking at ways to subsidize higher carbon emitting vehicles with lower carbon emitting vehicles is a valuable middle step. We shouldn't use EVs as the only solution that moves the ball forward. I'm a believer in incrementalism, and I don't think there's anything wrong with using those as intermediate steps, but as well, I think it is good to point out community and multifamily charging as probably a intermediate step versus you get a Tesla, which again, is probably not going to happen. Not in the near future anyway.
Thanks. Okay, well, actually, looking at the clock, thinking about what we need to do before the evening ends, we're going to have one more question from the audience. And Janice, will start off with you on this one. Developers have a lot of power in Bellevue and lobby heavily to avoid change. How will you work with them to drive climate action and resist their laissez-faire influence?
Well, first of all, I would say that this is a really important question because related to climate, one of the things we've been able to do is, as part of our climate action, there is now a Bellevue 2030 where property owners are coming together to look at how they reduce their energy usage in buildings, because we know that existing buildings are 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So that's actually one of the pieces that we're doing. I would say the other thing we want to make sure we're always thoughtful about is that if there are any benefits to developers, we have to get an equivalent benefit back to the city, because otherwise it's considered a gift of public funds. So we take that very, very seriously when we look at any of our codes for adoption and how we look at trade-offs and working in partnership with business community, because we know that the city doesn't own a lot of properties, we don't own a lot of buildings, but what we can do is find ways to work in partnership for win-win.
Great, thank you, Betsy.
When you talk about developers, I think of the Wilburton Vision Implementation Area, Wilburton Commercial Area, also known as Mid-Lakes, from Home Depot up to Lake Bellevue, that is currently under review. I think before that Planning Commission we keep hearing about. And I believe that the developers and property owners in that particular area want to do the best for the city, for themselves, but most importantly, for the people that they need to attract to make all of their endeavors successful. And greater incentives, perhaps, getting everybody at the table at the same time to review the options, and getting the developers full buy-in on environmental compatibility, especially with, that's McDonald Miller, that's Perry England, I think his name is. And he works for the city to make sure that the city buildings are environmentally compatible. I believe that we can all work together to create, actually, Bellevue can set the standard for the nation in developing this new property and making it the most environmentally friendly new development, mixed use, fun, vital area instead of, a bunch of parking lots. So I think I think developers can be at the forefront of this change.
Great, thanks. Dave?
So I just want to be a little bit careful that we don't put too much effort into demonizing other community members. I think we're lucky here that we have a lot of long-term landowners. These are people who are invested in our city. They've been here for multiple generations. I think there is a level of commitment to making sure that our city does thrive. And I think some of them certainly have been involved in increasing the housing supply and making money in the same time. So we have a unique set of landowners here. So I think too that they realize that, that the horse is out of the barn on this. There's no question about the impact of construction and housing and on climate change. And so I think that they maybe aren't thrilled with it, but they're on board. Many of them live here in the community, and they have the same issues to deal with the climate that we do. So I think we need to make sure that they are part of the team, that there's an amount of accountability there, and that we hold their feet to the fire. But I'm not sure it's the Herculean task that we sometimes make it out to be. And we really do need to be good partners and expect each other to meet our commitments.
Great. Thank you, Dave. John?
Yeah, I appreciate what Dave just said. The reality is, and I've worked with a number of them going back very far, and now working with, particularly in the Wilburton area and in Bell Red and areas, we do have developers who look at this and are very concerned about it. And one of the things we're dealing with is some people are wanting to keep certain areas which could be developed better very much lower, and actually not getting the infrastructure we need, and it doesn't actually help people to want to be more environmentally friendly. So we can work with them, and they're doing it now, and I appreciate it. And Dave has a good idea, a good eye on this, is that we do have developers who go off in directions that we don't, we have to work with, but we have created an atmosphere that they understand that having a better Bellevue and having these things as part of it really increases their wealth and their what they want to do with their work. So we can do this, and again, it comes down to having groups like this working with us and people out, and you can influence. There are thousands out there, and you're just representing a large group. And really work with us and make sure the council, all council members, don't say, well, we just want to we're not going to let you go this far. Don't worry about it. It's just something we want to keep here. When something more better and more environmentally friendly can be done, working together. So we have the opportunity to do this. And again, thank you for your involvement here and for really pushing on people meeting these environmental concerns. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Paul?
Yes, I think it's a tricky question because developers really are our partners in supplying the housing that the city desperately needs, and we have a series of land use codes with respect to affordability ratios. We have an MFTE. These are essentially dials that we can move back and forth. If we push the dial too far one way, it does become a giveaway to developers. If we push the dial too far the other way, nothing gets built. So there really is there's a calibration to that, and there's not an easy answer that states, well, you just set it to 5 and you're good. It doesn't quite work so simply. I think we do have some gaps right now in where those dials are set for large, really tall buildings downtown, and I have concerns that we haven't necessarily viewed downtown in a three-dimensional sense and appreciated that the loss of height that we've got on some projects that could have been built taller with better incentives, we're not going to get that back for a generation. So I know that's not a very specific answer, but unfortunately I think the devil is in the details on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mo.
Oh, sorry, I turned it off.
Paul. So I think the 85% plus of our emission is because of residential building, commercial building, and our transportation. In each category, we can partner with developers. More workforce housing, more affordable housing means that 90% of the people who work in Bellevue that commute to Bellevue, that's going to be reduced because people are working where they are living. Green building is one way. If we partner with developer, green construction is one way that we address our climate change. And finally, as I mentioned, is our tree canopy. If we work with our developer, that they need to appreciate our tree canopy, and if for any reason that should be more restricted, they need to remove that, they need to plant more. So there are a lot of collaboration, and they should be our partner to address our climate change.
Thank you. And let's give a big round of applause to our candidates. Thank you so much for taking time tonight to be part of this. We appreciate it.